I'm here with Karim Lakhani, professor at Harvard Business School and co-author of the new book, Competing in the Age of AI. And Karim and I actually met when I was accepted into the Harvard Business Analytics program, which is a brand new program that Harvard's offering. It's actually Karim can talk about this more better than I can, but it's a three school collaboration: the Harvard Business School, the School of Engineering, and also the Statistics Department at Harvard University. And it's a great program that I was a part of. It's a 9-month program. And Kareem, I'm really excited to have you on to talk about AI and your new book because it's just a fascinating read, which I was able to get a copy myself when I met up with you recently in New York. And so thanks for being here.
Jeff, great to be here with you as well, and delighted to talk about the book and all the amazing things that are going on in the world today.
Yeah. So we met when I was part of HBAP, which is what all the insiders call it. and
Yeah.
and were you working on this book at the time? I'm just curious, like what the timeline for this book was like.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think, two things. One is like whenever you're writing a book and people ask you, how's it going? You always like say, don't ask me that question because it's terrible. The writing process is terrible. But in some ways, this book has been 7 years in the making. 7 years ago, Marco Ianciti, my co-author and also faculty member at HBS, and I started this MBA class called Digital Innovation and Transformation. And the way we teach at HBS is by going into companies and doing case studies. So every single session that we run is based on a case study. And so we started to walk around the world really to meet with companies and think about what the dynamics that we saw occur in the software industry 20 years ago, the rise of ecosystems, the rise of platforms, the rise of open source software, those types of ecosystem-based companies and those dynamics in the software industry were now happening in all other industries as well. And as we started to write these cases, a peculiar thing happened to us. Around the same time, what we noticed that many of these companies were set up in a very different way. Their operating model, as we talk about in the book, was very different from the ways in which traditional companies and organizations were set up. And as we poked around that, what we saw was that the core of these companies was, data and analytics, and that human decision making was being automated, and humans were sort of being put on the edges of the corporation, versus the main activities of those companies were being done by analytics and algorithms and data. And that was sort of the insights we started to see over and over again as we started to develop this course. And then really it got accelerated when I helped sort of co-found this Harvard Business Analytics program, where we, for the first time, started to work with our computer science department at Harvard and the stats department at Harvard and did even more cases. And then it became apparent that both the operating models of companies and the business models of the companies were changing radically. So in many ways, the book is 7 years old and 7 years in the making, but the tight writing period was about 18 months ago. So right when you saw me as an instructor and as a director of the program, we were sort of also, the course that I taught, the digital strategy and innovation, in many ways is the foundation to the thinking we did in the book. And so, it's a kind of like a dance where we're creating course materials, we're creating cases, and that's also feeding our own insights about the book as well.
Nice. So yeah, I think the book, and we're going to talk more about this in a second, is really great. It really gets to the heart of how AI is transforming, like you said, industries, even industries that aren't, every company today has to be a computer company, right? A tech
Exactly.
company, right? Every company
Exactly.
has to be utilizing these types of technologies in order to succeed and actually make it into the next phase of business, or else they'll be replaced, which I
Absolutely.
think we'll talk more about. But I jumped the gun a little bit, and I didn't get to ask my favorite question, or which is usually the first question I ask, which is who you are and what you do. And obviously you're a professor at Harvard Business School, but what is that
Yeah.
like? I'm curious. What does a professor do on a day-to-day basis besides teach classes?
We smoke cigars, drink whiskey, have leather chairs. No, far from it. I wish. So, look, there are sort of three major functions we have as faculty. Um, one is, of course, a teaching function. And at HBS, that's paramount. We live and die by the case method. We really push hard on making sure that we have teaching excellence in everything that we do. So teaching takes up a substantial portion of our time. The second bit is research. So research comes in two flavors. One is sort of the research you do around the pedagogy, around the case materials. So here we'll go and spend time with companies and write up cases and so forth. But then there's also academic research that we are writing sort of nerdy articles for scholarly journals, things like management science and organization science and so forth. And these are, arcane journals that we write for, and it's all peer reviewed. But this is a foundational way for us to build knowledge. So our work is to write these papers, do research, write these papers, and then also apply them to the real world by doing these cases. In my instance, I do all my research through my lab, the Laboratory for Innovation Science at Harvard, where we work with organizations and companies to do our core research around innovation and crowdsourcing and the production of knowledge, and use that as a model to then also learn about the ways in which the world is changing. So I do a ton of research with my lab. We have about 20 people in the lab. We run field experiments with a range of organizations like NASA, like Topcoder, like Harvard Medical School, and we use that to sort of get at fundamental insights about the ways in which innovation works. And I study innovation as my core aspect of my research. The third element of our work is actually what is sort of external work. So like I serve on boards of Mozilla Corporation, several AI-based startups, and that keeps it real for us. Like we then face real issues of companies out in the marketplace, trying to make a difference, both at an early stage, like some startups that I work with, to, a well-established, mature organization like Mozilla. And so that also sort of, brings the world of business close to us. And we try to balance amongst all those three types of activities. About 10% of our time is dedicated to these kinds of external activities. About 40% of our time, 50% of our time is dedicated to the research activities, and then the balance is left for teaching as well.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. I think one of the things that I want to talk a little bit more about is the Harvard business case studies, which you guys are famous for. Not just Harvard uses these to teach, but other schools around the country also use them. I'm curious, how do these case studies come to be in the first place? Is it like, do you guys see something and you're like, we should check this out? Or is it like, or do companies approach you, or how does it work?
Yeah, look, one of the great privileges of academia is that we get an intellectual hunting license. And so we can go out and go whatever our curiosity piques us, we go out there and figure things out. And so most of the case studies are initiated by us. I'll hear about an interesting company, or I've come across them in my research, and then I'll approach them. And it can be because I've met them already, so I can just say, hey, let's do a case. I might see them in the exec ed classroom and might want to talk to them afterwards, for example. Or I do cold calls too. Like, there's one case study that you encountered, Havas. I saw the then CEO of Havas, David Jones, talk in a BBC program. I was very fascinated by what they were doing. So I, tried to call him, couldn't get through. So then I FedExed him, snail mailed him a package and a letter. And then, 3 weeks later, I was on the phone and we're talking about doing a case study. So in all these cases, we initiate the contact most of the times. And sometimes companies will come to us, and then we want to be sure that we can, that there's a pedagogical purpose, of course, in doing the case study. And then we'll go visit the companies, talk to the executives, and write up the cases. The cases that we do, are done in cooperation with the companies, right? So the cases, as you saw, are weird document, right? There's no resolution in the case. A case
Right.
poses a business problem, and the idea is that you get the reader familiar with the business problem. You are learning vicariously through them, but then the real learning actually happens in the classroom, whether that be virtual, which is what you experience, or physical, which is no longer the case right now. Everybody at
Right. I was just gonna
HBS is
say.
doing virtual classrooms. We've taught them all how to do this method on Zoom. But the point being that the learning actually happens in the classroom in dialogue with the faculty. And so the cases are left with open questions, and then we come to resolution and the lessons in the classroom. But the cases need to actually get approved by the company. So no cases get written if they're done in cooperation with the company without their approval, because we're not in it as a witch hunt or like a journalism. This is really pedagogical to be able for us to teach certain concepts, certain approaches to running a business with students, and then we need companies to cooperate with us to be able to pull this off.
Right, and the best part about the cases is that after the class kind of dives in on it, has the whole discussion, and everyone's exchanging ideas, is that you then get to present what the company actually did, or
Yes.
and
Yes.
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and then
Exactly.
you have further discussions about why and why not.
Exactly.
Very
Or
cool.
sometimes we can even get the protagonists to come in and talk about it as well, which is
Exactly,
quite cool as well. Yeah.
definitely. So let's jump back to AI. Um,
Yeah.
in the book, I noticed, especially early on, there you have an explanation between something called strong AI and weak AI. What
Yes.
exactly, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think this is very important. So I think when people think about AI, the immediate picture in their minds is like Star Wars or Star Trek,
Hmm.
where you have almost sentient artificial beings that can answer any question, do amazing calculations, and do and are almost human-like. That's known as strong AI, where there's no distinction between the computer and the human being. I think that's very far off. Weak AI, what we define is as computer algorithms dedicated to doing one specific task that a particular human might have been doing previously. And so these weak AI algorithms are very specific. Like, for example, when you get a ride on Uber, there's a weak AI algorithm that is doing the matching, the optimal matching between you and the driver around you. When Amazon makes a book recommendation to you, that's a weak AI algorithm that has set aside up and actually gives you a recommendation based on your prior buying history, based on your commenting history, and other information that they have. When Facebook says this photo might have this person in your stream, that's again weak AI that is doing facial recognition amongst your friends. So these are all examples of weak AI, where the algorithm is not superhuman. It's superhuman in one narrow particular task. And what we're seeing, though, is that companies are deploying multitudes of these weak AI algorithms to look superhuman, but each algorithm itself is very specific and in many ways very fragile. You can't take the algorithm that does facial recognition and then move it over to do voice recognition, right? That's not going to happen.
Hmm.
You will need a separate voice recognition algorithm. And so that's what we mean by weak AI. Weak AI are algorithms designed to do a specific task, and oftentimes they will do that task almost better than humans. But they're very limited and constrained and brittle in that sense. And the best companies are taking amalgams of these algorithms and then creating lots of services for their customers.
So weak AI is essentially where it's at right now. Those are those specialized algorithms, if you will, that these companies have developed to do and identify, friend recommendations or Netflix recommendations or whatever. Um,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's where companies should be focusing more than.
100%, 100%. I mean, I think for the vast majority of the economy, right, changing your core operating model to have weak AI at the core is actually very achievable and will deliver results, right? Don't get caught enamored with like I'm going to wait till data from Star Trek shows up, right? No, you can now implement for a range of operations issues: customer defection, customer fraud, predicting what kind of fashions might be selling in your organization, your management of your warehouses, you name it. Weak AI algorithms are ready to go if you have the right set of data coming in.
So one of the things that you mentioned when we got together somewhat recently, when you were talking about your book at an event, was how I believe one of the hotel companies, maybe it was Marriott or one of them, had bought that building in Union Square, that hotel in Union Square,
Yes.
instead of investing in that $250 million or whatever it was in developing new AI technologies to enhance the business. Um,
Yes.
these changes, these types of investments, don't seem very wise, according to what you're saying.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, I think every company, my sense is the following: like Marriott. I mean, right now, at least in today's world, all hotels are in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Given what's happening with the COVID virus. Um, but in more normal times, you imagine that you have a company like Marriott, which provides hotels, right? Provides hotel rooms for visitors, and they're set up to run large establishments, large hotels, and they're faced with a competitor either like a Airbnb, or even Booking.com as an advisor, where Airbnb has said we don't need to run hotels, we just need to make the experience of somebody getting a room super easy, and we can get rooms from around the world. And so that model is all about technology investments, right? You need to have lots of data, ubiquity of your technology, and algorithms that can predict, what will Jeff like when he goes, to Singapore, and being able to serve up for you the right types of matches. Those are software and technology and data investments. Airbnb and Booking.com don't have to worry about running the hotel. Marriott now is faced with these competitors. They face both Hilton, but they also face these guys as competitors. And then there's a question of like, where will you allocate resources, right? Part of the fundamental task and strategy is allocation of resources and making choices. And when I saw, in late fall last year, that they were actually spending, it was Fansbury, like $500 million on this amazing property in New York. I was like, that's $500 million not going to their tech center. That's $500 million not going to their data infrastructure. That's $500 million not going into their AI strategy, and because that has to be done. And so I think many companies are going to be facing these choices, and then those decisions will tell us what they're prioritizing or not.
Right. And I think I think that's true. And one of the things I'm wondering, based on your experience in having, examined and worked with many companies over the years, is that do these companies that need to change, that need to make these investments in AI, they're sitting on the data in many cases, they just don't have access to it, right? Or they don't have a way to kind of bring it all together to make it it work.
Yeah, so look, I think the issue is that most companies are siloed in their data, right? Each department has its own data silo, right? And that there's no data integration across. So even at hotel companies, right, there are silos of reservations from room service to entertainment, right, to the points program, right? There's these siloed data, and then even by property as well, or owners by it as well. And so there's no holistic view of how we have a single view of all the data that exists inside of our companies. They have the data. If you think about it, Marriott knows, my credit card numbers, know where I live, knows my hotel preferences, knows the cities I go to, knows how long I stay in those hotels, knows what I order for rooms. They have the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's all scattered in the shelves in different places. And they haven't done the investments yet, or they're doing these investments, but it takes them a while to reorganize around data being the core of a business, not the hotel being the core of the business. Right? Once you say the data is the core of the business, you will have a very different view of the architecture of your organization versus thinking that I have a room service department, I have a laundry department, I have a reservations department, I have a catering department, and so on and so forth.
Do you have any specific examples of things like where how Marriott could utilize this data in a way that they could that would allow them to better compete with like an Airbnb, like you were talking about?
Yeah, look, I mean, look, I think in many ways now it may be even be too late in terms of this, right? So, like for example, when Airbnb was first launching, I remember talking to CIOs of large hotel chains, and they said, "Look, we can build the Airbnb. The system at Airbnb was not that difficult, right? I mean, it's effort, but it's not rocket science, right?
Mm-hmm.
To say I'm going to have customers on one side, rooms on the other side. I'm going to do some matching." Right, and I'm going to get lots of data about their usage, and that data informs me about how to make better matches and so forth. That's a knowable task, and it's doable. The problem was that the executive teams at many of these hotel chains are still focused on saying we are about creating the hotel experience, not about thinking about the traveler experience from the time I'm searching for a room to the time I get to a room and I exit, right? So, for example, if, or, this is again, now some sort of, imagining if they were smart, not smart, but imagine they'd sort of seen this thing happen 7 years ago, right? You could say, well, look, if I'm searching for rooms in Paris and my hotel rooms are booked solid, right? Maybe I should tell Karim to go to a Marriott curated apartment, right? Which will have, which will have Marriott level of amenities, Marriott points, right? Heck, we will even deliver food for you, so you can still get the Marriott experience in an apartment. And oh, by the way, Karim trusts Marriott. He stays way too many nights at the Marriott chains, right? Right, and so he'll be very happy with things. Do you see what I mean? So like 7 years ago, this was within their reach. They could have cut off Airbnb at their knees, right? But they were so focused on like, no. The guest experience starts when you walk into our physical property, instead of rethinking what the guest experience means. And I think that's part of the realization many of them are facing, is that the game changes to a different level of expectation and an experience, and we want to be. No, look, they're working at this, right? Today they have experiences. I think they've done some deals with some fine properties to make this happen, but it almost seems too little, too late from my point of view, right?
Mm-hmm. It's almost it reminds me of the Nokia case that we discussed during the program, where obviously everyone's familiar with Nokia, and then Apple came out with the iPhone, but Nokia was on top of literally they were in what was it, the Time magazine cover or whatever.
Yeah,
it was some magazine cover. Where Nokia
exactly.
was on the top of the world, and essentially, Apple came out with the iPhone a couple months later or whatever, and they're essentially dead in the water.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the key thing there, right, is that what we see happen is the shift from a product-based approach to a platform-based approach. And the platform-based approach requires you to be data-centric, data-first, right, and AI-first. And I think that's like the shift that many of these organizations are struggling with. Even Harvard Business School, right? If you sort of think about us, we're a product-based organization. We have an MBA program, we have an exec ed program, we have an online program, we have a publishing business, right? We have alumni relations. These are all silos inside of our organization. There are 9 different IT groups within HBS, right?
Right.
And
so how integrated is your data over at Harvard Business School?
It's terrible. It's terrible, right? And there's all these political fights about the data as well. So I'm not saying that Marriott is like the worst case. Every incumbent organization today is faced with these same issues of silos, politics, and re-architecture. And what we're discovering is that the consumers, the customers, whether they be B2C clients or B2B clients, want a different experience. Right, and that different experience is being pressured by these new competitors, right? And they start with data first, integration first, right? And then figure out, the products become applications, not the fully integrated vertical stacks that they are today.
Right, right. So let's also look at another thing that you introduce in the book, which is the notion of an AI factory. When during the immersion on campus, when you were teaching us about the AI factory, I thought it was really fascinating. You put this great diagram up on the chalkboard, and it was really interesting to see how it all comes together. First of all, I'm hoping you can explain to everyone what an AI factory is, and if you have any good
Yes.
examples of them.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So look, I think the transformation that many companies are facing today is one where the operating model, right? And so when we talk about the operating model, we think about three dimensions, right? Which is how the company delivers value to its customers, right? The operating model is structured to deliver value to customers, and then how we think about this is that there is a how you achieve scale, how you serve more and more customers, how you achieve scope, how you offer them many, many things, and then how you learn and you improve. So the operating model has to deliver scale, has to deliver scope, and has to deliver learning along the way. So these three things are the foundations of what the operating model does. And what we're seeing is that in most organizations, these are today manual processes, right? Where we silo ourselves up into ways to deliver scale, so that our MBA program is scaled to deliver value to 2,000 residential students. Our exec ed program is scaled to deliver value to 12,000 students that come to campus, and so on and so forth. And all of them sort of hit diminishing returns, right? Because the structures is such that you focus, you get things done, you have a whole range of sort of manual processes set up, and that's what delivers you early value, but over time that value diminishes. When we switch to a model of data-centric AI-first organizations, the AI factory is at the core of the organization. The AI factory is set up in a way so that you can deliver scale at a much higher level than the traditional organization. You can offer them many, many different things, and you're continuously learning. And so the AI factory at its core has a system that can absorb a lot of data from both within your operations and outside. And there's a relentless view of data ingestion coming in from existing operations and from outside, and a ton of investments to make that process rock solid, right? I see lots of companies underinvest in sort of what I call the data janitorial work, right? Because it's not the sexy work, it's not
Right.
the
It's not
cool
the. I
AI
was just going
stuff.
to say it's not the
Yeah,
fun. It's not the fun stuff.
yeah, exactly. But if you haven't done your data hygiene work well,
Which
you won't be able to
right.
get all this magical stuff, right?
As we learned in HBAP, right? I mean, it's very important that
Yes.
the data is clean and can be read and is accurate and all that stuff in order for this to work well.
Exactly, exactly. So I think the first element of the data factory is sort of your data pipelines you've set up and how you invest in that. The second element is the algorithm development, right? And how algorithms, again, as we just talked about, weak AI algorithms that are going to actually be able to do one specific task and do it at scale for you. Uh, so for example, like even today, if you sort of think about this COVID crisis we're faced with, like our healthcare system is facing an exponential threat in terms of patients coming in and trying to get healthcare, right? Manual systems that we have today in healthcare aren't going to be sufficient, right? I mean,
Hmm.
the first task is screening, right? Screening right now is all manual, right? You go in and you get it swabbed and so forth. But lots of people have lots of questions and worries, and phone lines are jammed, doctors are jammed, and so forth. We need an AI solution to even help us do the screening, right? If 10% of the exposures are going to be at risk of hospitalization, how do we do automated screening up front through chatbots and other measurements, other ways to send data so that we can actually limit the pressure on our ER departments, right? Because we are facing, we talk about this in our book about this collision between an exponentially growing value creation and sort of the tapering off value creation in traditional organizations. But the same issues actually exist in the healthcare system today. And so we need algos to be able to process this data at scale and be able to deliver value for specific things. So a data AI factory needs, again, data ingestion, right? Algorithmic development. The great thing about algorithmic development, by the way, is that for many of the tasks that we need in our organizations, we can get many of these algorithms off the shelf. We still need data scientists and AI specialists to help us train the algorithms and get them all fine-tuned, but the majority of them are now available off the shelf through various cloud platforms like Microsoft, or is open source, Microsoft, Amazon, you name it.
Right.
So all of these are set up in this way. And then you need to then move into a setting where you have software development, right? You take these algorithms, and then you can then create an infrastructure to deliver the software under which these algorithms will be sitting under. And then you need an experimentation platform that will test and make sure that the predictions you're making by your algorithms are in fact accurate or not, right? That is the AI factory. And I think in the book, we talk a lot about what Netflix has built as their AI factory. If you sort of think about your experience with Netflix, from the recommendations it makes to the movies you watch, to the tiles it shows you in terms of the next movie, so on. So everything at Netflix,
right? Everything is completely personalized to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, even the thumbnail, like you mentioned, that they show you. Yeah.
Is personalized, and even like if they know that Jeff likes Bromcom and Kareem likes action, right? Those two things for the same movie, they'll show us different images,
right? Exactly.
Right? But it's not some human curator saying, Jeff likes Bromcom. Let me rom-com, or maybe there's like bromance-com. I don't know.
I was thinking you were going with bromance comedy. That's cool with me.
Right? So there's no like person sitting there saying Jeff likes bromcom and Kareem likes action, right? It's like
Harold
it's an
algorithm White Castle.
Exactly, and so even for the same movie, it will show you different images to meet your preferences. Right, that's all automated, and so that's what the AI factory does at scale, right? And the same thing, like we use the example in the book of Ant Financial, the company out of China that serves 1.2 billion customers.
That's so insane to me.
With 10,000 employees.
Yeah,
right, with 10,000 employees, and there again, they are set up in a way to really go hard on full automation. Right? They have this system where if you're setting up a new account with them, it takes you 3 minutes to do the application online, 1 second for their approval, and 0 human intervention. Right?
Right. The approval is done based on the algorithms that they have in place.
Exactly. It's not a person sitting there saying, should I give Jeff a loan or not? Right? And so
right.
Again, that's the AI factory that we think is sort of becoming essential to most organizations. And the thing to note, though, right, as we're talking about this, is like the AI factory at Netflix, an entertainment company, is exactly the same as the AI factory at Ant Financial, a bank, right?
Mm-hmm. Like the setup is the same.
The setup is the components. The setup is the same. Of course, the algorithms, the data are different, and so forth. But just think about this, right? Like a McDonald's hamburger factory is very different from the General Motors or the Ferrari car factory, right? Two distinctive things, right? How you make hamburgers, very different from how you make cars. But the AI factory at McDonald's and the AI factory at General Motors is exactly the same, right? Because the processes, the systems, the capabilities you need to do are exactly the same. And that's like a huge aha for us to say that that's going to be a key factor, that companies that know how to build these AI factories, scale them, and deploy them across the entire operating model are the ones that are going to be successful going in the future.
Do you think that the factor that the components and the setup is essentially the same for these AI factories makes it more democratized, or does it not really won't really impact whether companies can adopt it or not?
No, I think great question. I think what it tells me is that there's two things. One, the data is what matters, right? Because it's the data, and your ability to get data and extract value from that data is going to be the differentiating factor for you. Not so much the fancy AI algorithms you have, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's the thing. And then it's really, from my sense, a leadership question. Can engineering leaders and business leaders work together to see the potential of this across the enterprise, right? And it's all about your ability to scale the AI factory across the enterprise. So I think it's data and your ability to scale, which is going to make a difference in the short run coming ahead for us.
Gotcha. I think one executive who got it right, maybe before any of us, was Jeff Bezos, who in the book in your book in 2002. This is 2002. Jeff Bezos wrote a memo
Yeah,
which you share, and he introduces a mandate to the company, to Amazon. He says
yeah.
every service must be able to be used by external developers, and to me that just seemed well ahead of its time. Do you attribute, like, is this something you attribute to the company's success today, and the fact that they've they've essentially built, AWS wasn't really a thing back in
Yeah.
2002. I don't think it existed
No.
yet, and and the fact that he made this mandate that all of their services and tools must be able to be also used by outside developers just seems like a very bold thing to say. And basically, he also said it's like if you don't do it, you're fired.
Yeah. Have a nice day at the end. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no, look, I think so. I think the thing. Let's abstract from Amazon's lesson. So what Amazon realized is that the way they had built their systems were not going to allow them to scale to their ambitions. Okay, so they said, okay, what does that mean? What that meant is that they had basically built a silo-based organization, and they had to move to a platform-based organization where everybody was going to interface both internal people and outside and external people through common interfaces. And so, the nerdy term of service-oriented architecture, SOAs, from way back when. That
Hmm.
realization allowed them to really change the trajectory of Amazon, right? Because in 2002, they were still like a fancy bookseller, right?
Yeah.
Right? They were still selling books and other things, but it was like they just had more efficiencies. They weren't a platform yet, but what they realized in their ambition to become a platform-based company, they had to fundamentally re-architect the entire IT system. But by the way, it also meant they had to re-architect the organization as well. So what we talk about in the book is that if you're going to move to an AI factory at your core, this will mean a re-architecture of your technology, which we think is actually the easy part. Is really the re-architecture of your organization and the mirroring of the organization to the technology that's going to be the key component here. And I think that's exactly why, we attribute why Nokia was not able to make this change, because they didn't see the emergence of this platform-like thinking in the technology to take hold, right? They still were focused as product silo-based organizations. But then also the technology also has to evolve as well. So this architectural change is super critical. And I think what we know about Amazon is that, by the way, I think most organizations think, okay, I've got an IT system, it's one and done, and it'll keep going, and I'll keep patching it. Amazon has rewritten this code three times from
Wow.
scratch, right? As they have done their transformation. Why? Because they realized that it took us this far, and now we're rethinking other things. We're going to rewrite the damn thing all over again. So this memo was really by Bezos was really when people read the memo in the book, they'll see it's a super nerdy memo, right? But it's
Yeah.
really it's an org transformation memo. It's not a technical memo. It's like, hey guys, we're going to be working differently. We'll be talking differently, right? And interacting very differently. So let's get our act together, and we're going to use technology to get us there. But it's really an org transformation memo.
How important do you think that is? I mean, I know you kind of alluded to it before, but in terms of leadership having to take charge in a situation like this, where firms have to evolve to the next phase of business, if you will, which is
Yeah.
going to be more AI factory model based.
Yeah, look, I think this is all about top down. This is because it's not just the operating model that's going to change, but also the business model, how a company creates and captures value. And so we can't have sort of the fast company change agents driving this. This has to be the C-suite, right? We need the change agents to make it possible. but the edict has to be board level and C-suite level, right? They
Got it.
have to
Yeah.
see this change and fund it, support it, and drive the transformation. Like, again, Jeff Bezos as CEO writing a super nerdy memo, it tells you he understands the technology and its implications for the organization, right?
Right. He
It's
knew
not,
how,
it's
how
not,
important it was.
yeah, exactly. It's not being outsourced to the IT department or the CTO. No, the CEO is writing that memo and putting it
Right.
into writing.
So in the time that we have left before we get to the lightning round, I wanna talk a little bit about privacy, which
Yeah,
is an important factor I think when it comes to AI and as businesses move towards implementing these AI factory models.
yeah.
How concerned should the average consumer be, if at all, about like should we be worried about the data that's being ingested or into their system, or uh, is this just the way it's going to be?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think we're for both companies and citizens, we are approaching a new uh, territory that none of us know the rules of yet. In the book we talk about how more data, drives better algorithms drive better services drive more usage, which gives you more data, and we have this virtuous cycle.
Right.
But it's not clear yet to both companies and or citizens what is the value of data? Do we want more perishable data? Should be getting rid of our data, right? So we're actually have started at our lab with Marco and our doctoral students um, a real program on trying to ascertain the value of data, right? And depending upon its characteristics, when would you want lots of it? When is it useless? When is it useful? How long is the shelf life of data, and so on and so forth? So that's the one thing. So imagine you are a company that is just sucking up all this data, right? But the shelf life of this data is very low, but you now have all this risk that if you are somehow cyber attacked, right, and your data gets released, lots of people are going to be mad at you. So should you be keeping all this data or not, right? And so in a very abstract level, we have not figured out yet the economics of data, and we're learning about this as we go along. Everybody's learning about this along the way. For me
Is
personally,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was
No,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
is that a problem though? I mean, we look at what Facebook, what's happened with Facebook over the past couple of
Yes.
years,
Yes.
where essentially we hadn't we s- I mean, we still haven't figured out the value of data, right?
Yes.
And because of that learning along the way, we ran into the issues that we did so far.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the thing. That's something like both citizens and individuals are figuring out what their value of data is. So let me give you an example. One of my colleagues at Harvard Business School, Leslie John, she does a lot of research on how individuals respond to data privacy questions. And what she is finding is that citizens themselves don't know how to value their very personal data. She's run these experiments in a whole range of settings with real people where 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 people will reveal super personal data on websites that say, are you bad.com, right? Literally, if this website says, are you bad.com, they will just reveal a ton of data, right? If you have a more official looking website, they will not reveal any data at all. And you
Hmm.
go, wow, like how are people valuing their privacy and their data is not clear. And Mozilla, we make the Firefox browser. We've always been emphasizing, like data privacy, but we're in a war of attrition because other browsers that use all this data are winning, right? And
Yeah.
the privacy message did not hold water until very recently. So I think individuals themselves are learning about this. Even myself personally, look, I'm all into all my Google services. Google knows everything I do. I get tremendous value from it. Now, am I
Yeah.
worried about the fact that Google knows everything about it? Yeah, but am I going to give this up? I'm not so sure, right? And so,
Yeah.
and so,
It's
no,
a tough
really,
call.
it's a really tough call. And so, I think part of this is sort of this realization that all of us are facing that our data are useful, but do we have the right governance? Do we have the right controls? Do the companies get it as well? Right? And I think that's the journey we're all. So I think we're in super early days of this, and both from a research point of view, but from a managerial and executive practice point of view, from a company practice point of view, these things are going to be found out, and there'll be a ton of mistakes along the way. From the breaches at Target to the disasters at Facebook, and so on. There will be a ton of lessons that we will all need to learn from and figure out, and to see what we want. And what I expect also, which we're sort of seeing already, right, is that some companies will differentiate on privacy, right? So Apple's already doing that. Apple says we don't touch your data.
Right. DuckDuckGo,
Right.
the search engine.
Exactly. And so I think some companies will differentiate on privacy, and others will say, no, the data that you give us is actually what enables us to give you tremendous services, and we have adequate controls on the back end to limit the access to this data, or we get rid of the data, and so on and so forth. As time goes forward, I think we're still gonna learn a lot about this as time goes on.
Definitely, I think that's pretty much right on. I'm just nervous that there will be another, set of Facebook type issues. Maybe not at Facebook, but at a different company, and then it kind of detracts from the whole.
Exactly. And the problem is that look, how many times has the U.S. government's data sources have been hacked over and over and over? So like most of our personnel in government, their data has already been hacked several times over by many state actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so
true.
We're already living in this world now. Government employees, our military personnel, our federal civil servants, right, our politicians, all their data has been hacked many times over.
True. It's true.
So and there are no consequences to both the systems developers or the ones that go hack this data either, right? And that's
exactly. I mean, we were talking on Slack about that Clearview AI company, right? That literally scraped Facebook's data without their permission. And if Facebook says, "All right, we're shutting you down," but they already have the data, well, are they going to get that data back? The stuff that they already scraped.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's difficult, but I like you said, I think we'll have to kind of continue on this journey and see where it leads us. Hopefully, people start figuring some stuff out. I'm curious about that research that you're conducting. I'd love to be kept in the loop on that, but that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
So Karim, you made it through the hardest part of this podcast, which is what we just did. So now it's time for the lightning round, which when you're ready to go, let me know and we'll get started.
I'm ready to go.
All right, here we go. Would you rather be able to read minds or teleport?
Ooh. Oh my goodness. I'll go reading minds.
All right. What word do you always misspell?
Delicious.
Delicious. For me, it used to be entrepreneur. I had the most difficult time spelling that, but I finally got it, I think. Would you rather? Yeah. Right now, I'd have to type it to spell it. And I'm not the one in the lightning round. You are. Would you rather live a week in the future or relive a week in the past?
Oh, future.
Book or ebook?
Ebook.
Last one. Would you ever go skydiving?
When I was 20, yes. Now, no.
Yeah, I don't have that urge. I don't feel it. But my wife does, and if she wants to go, that's good for her.
Yeah, I was talking to her, and she's like, "Let's go skydiving." I'm like, "No." When I was your age, I would love to have gone skydiving, but not now.
Well, I guess we can agree on that then together. No skydiving for us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Karim, it's been great having you on. If you haven't yet checked out the book, Competing in the Age of AI, you definitely should. It's a great book, great read, especially for the future of, if you're in business, it's just a must read, in my opinion. Karim, if anyone wants to get in touch with you after listening, what's the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. My Twitter handle is at Lakhani, Klakhani. And I'm also on LinkedIn as well, Professor KL. So just reach out, and happy to chat and
Nice. And
connect.
we'll make sure to include links to those as well.
Yeah.
But thanks again, Kareem. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Jeff. Take care. Fun talking to you again.